Welcome to Chef AJ and Friends. My guest today is Jeremy LaLonde from PB with J, and he has a brand new ebook coming out, and he's actually going to offer you a 20% off discount if you'd like to get it. There'll be a link below in the chat as well as in the show notes. It's PB&J Family Favorites, and he's going to be making an amazing recipe from it today called Apple Kissed Curry. Please welcome Jeremy. How are you?
I'm good. I'm just finishing up my prep. I'm just gonna dice an onion here. So I've just cut it in half, and I'm just gonna do a quick little dice in here. So this is a dish that comes together actually really, really quickly. I think in the cookbook, it's gonna say that it takes about 45 minutes. And I tried to be really generous with the cooking times because I know as someone who's, cooked from a lot of cookbooks, especially on our YouTube channel, we do a lot of cookbook reviews, and I find the timings are always pretty I think they're tuned for people that have made the recipe two or three times, but I like to time it out for somebody that has never made it before and is having to go back and refer to the recipe and go back and forth, as we often do when we're trying out a new recipe. um and I don't want someone to think they have a lot of time to make a recipe, and then it finds out they needed a lot more, and they got a million other things to do that day. So this one's really simple, and this is one we have been making for, I'd say, in various forms, probably close to 10 years. It's been a staple in our house. Our kids love it. Everyone loves it. One of the things that's unique about our cookbook is that what we've realized over the course of doing our YouTube channel and reviewing almost 50 cookbooks at this point is that we all have kind of a distinct, unique style or palate, I should say. My daughter's a little pickier. My son, even though he's never really eaten meat, has kind of a palate for meatier type flavors. My wife likes kind of fresh and light flavors, and I like comfort food. So, there's a lot of dishes that carry over between the three or the four. But what we decided to do was curate the book based on our palates. And so there's a chapter for every single member of our family in the book. Because I think that's true of a lot of cookbooks, even though nobody ever wants to say it, is that no one's ever going to like every single recipe in a cookbook. You're going to like a handful based on your flavor palette. So what I think this is going to do for people is it's going to help them narrow down the kind of recipes that are ideal for them. If they have kids that are picky like my daughter, well, the recipes in the book that she's approved are going to work for her. And so not only does everyone have their own chapter in the book, but we've got little infographics at the bottom of every page where you see our faces. So if you see my face on a recipe, it means that I've signed off on it as something that I enjoy, and vice versa across the spectrum for everyone in our family. But this is one that we've been making since the kids were really, really little. And when I say 15, yeah, it's been more than 10 years because my son is almost 15 and he's been eating it ever since he could eat. So closer to 15 years we've been making this recipe. And it's based on a recipe that I had that was not whole food plant-based, from another cookbook called Looney Spoons that I wanted to adapt, take the chicken out, take the oil out. And also I didn't love the way the spices kind of landed. I wanted to amp up the flavor. So this is what that one is.
Looney Spoons. I like that title.
Yeah, that's another Canadian. I think it's Janet and Greta. Can't remember their last name, but they're also Canadians. So a little shout out to them. So AJ is sharing the ingredients
Yeah,
in the description.
while you're cooking, I'm getting ready to put everything in the show notes. I don't do that in advance because it's just complicated to
No,
try
it's
to
too
set it in
hectic.
advance. But Jeremy, I'm just thinking, we got off right away with the cooking, which is great, but there might be some people watching today or watching it on YouTube that aren't really familiar with your journey or your story of your tremendous weight loss and starting a successful YouTube channel. So maybe talk a little bit about that as well.
Awesome. And then we'll get back to everything's ready now, so we can start cooking at any point in time. So yeah, so my journey started, I'm a filmmaker, is my initial was my first career. And as part of that journey, I've always been overweight my entire life. Um, and I would argue that it's because I was really focused on career first and really nothing else after that. I just wanted to be a filmmaker, and I knew that required, just a lot of discipline in that regard. And so, health wasn't necessarily the focus. And so, over the course of my life and career, I ballooned up to the heaviest I got was around 360 pounds,
Wow.
which is about double what I weigh right now.
That's amazing. You lost half your weight. You lost an entire person, in other words.
I lost literally half of myself, but
Yeah.
then found the better half, AJ. Um, but and then and it's a longer journey. But what also happened in that process was that I went too far with my weight loss at one point as well, because I just became focused on like the number on the scale and just how much weight can I possibly lose, to the point where I lost not only all the fat on my body, but I lost all the muscle too,
Ooh.
right? And so I got to the point where I was getting kind of skeletal and a little bit sickly. So part of my journey has also just been getting back to a balance of where I'm at right now, which is now I sit probably around 200, 210, depending on the day. But what's really great about that is I'm able to maintain that without any effort. I don't count calories. I eat, predominantly a whole food plant-based diet. And the amounts that I don't eat that are whole food plant-based are still plant-based and vegan. It just might be an ice cream, a Beyond Burger, like a non-vegan, a non-dairy ice cream and whatnot. So it's all still within that realm. But I don't say no to the occasional treat here and there, just knowing that that's part of the balance.
Is this your first book, Jeremy?
This is our first book. Again, like and all of this, like our whole YouTube channel, everything has just kind of been this really happy accident in my life. My journey was to be a filmmaker, was to work in traditional media. And so starting off on YouTube was just kind of like a little side experiment I wanted to do, just because as I was losing all of the weight, and gaining information from various sources like yourself and Dr. Greger and all these places, I just kept on getting asked like the same questions over and over again. And so I thought, well, why don't I just put all the information into one place? Or like a website and a YouTube channel. And also because I'm a filmmaker, that just felt natural to me. And it's just kind of organically grown over time, to the point where people have been asking us for probably the last 2 years, do we have a cookbook? Where can we get all your recipes? We'd love to buy a cookbook by you guys. So it's been something that's been a long gestating project that's finally going to come out at the end of the month.
That is fabulous. How long did it take you to work on?
My entire life.
Oh,
Isn't that the case though? With the first one's always that, right? The first of anything just takes your entire life to get to that point, and then you work on a deadline for the next one. I'd say we've been making some of these recipes, like I said, for over a decade. But in terms of when we actually sat down to go, okay, what's the book going to be? How are we going to um, kind of organize it? Because I'm a big fan of having like a theme, having like a way to just make decisions. And so when we kind of landed on what it is, which is like a family favorites cookbook, we went through all of our like several hundred recipes that we kind of play with over the years, and then narrowed it down to a little over 50, of ones that we knew were just kind of like bangers for our family that a lot of people would love. And knowing that we have a bunch of others in reserve, so that if we want to make a follow-up book, if this one goes over well, that we have, a next book full of recipes kind of ready to go. But that we can curate in a different way. You know what I mean? Because I think that's the important thing. Everyone's looking for a specific thing. So this one, as much as it's good for everyone, it's particularly good if you are in a family full of people who all have slightly different tastes.
yeah, that's cool. That's, have there been ever any recipes for your family where it was a universal flop?
Oh, yeah. I made a soup last week that my kids said deserved to live in the garbage.
Uh-oh.
Uh, yeah, constant. But that's what cooking is, you know? And I think that's what scares a lot of people off of cooking from by scratch and just by thinking because, well, they don't want to make something awful, you know? But one of the things that I try to, bring to people and remind them of is that it's like everything you've ever gotten good at in your life, you failed at a few times or repeatedly before you learn the skills. You need to put in that, what was it, the 10,000 hours to get good at anything. I'm not a trained cook by any stretch of the imagination. I had a mother who was, a cook in our home, and I, paid attention to her. But the kind of meals I was making, a decade ago and before that were very basic to awful meals. And so I'm pretty much self-trained. I did take the Ruby course, the that's ROUXBE. I took some of those plant-based certifications when I got really, really serious about going plant-based, just because I wanted to know how to make things the way that I used to eat them, So I was big on, well, how do I take these recipes I already love and convert them over to being whole food plant based? And that's what a lot of the recipes in our book are. It's recipes that we ate before any of us went fully plant based, some from my childhood, although we want to do more of those in a future book. So I'm largely self trained through, that course, myself, and YouTube.
Well, when you were cooking the other way, did your family still rate all the recipes like they do now?
No, because because it's been about 5 years since we've been on this journey, and at that point, we just ate. But we were always big on getting the kids actual feedback, and the kids have always known that they've never had to like food. We'd rather them be honest about it, because that's how you modify and that's how you adjust, and then you get it to the point where they do like something. And my wife's rule with the kids is that you have to try something. I think there's like a scientific point that says you have to try something at least like a dozen times before you can actually categorically say you don't like something. And that's especially true of kids, right? And I find the reverse is true with my daughter too. Like my daughter will try a dish and say she loves it, and then the next time I make it, she'll be like, ugh. So I have to, especially for any recipe that I have in the cookbook that Annie's name is under, she has verified multiple times she likes that dish.
That's funny. Who's the pickiest of the four of you?
Annie,
Ah,
yeah, very, very picky. Evie gets picky, but his tastes have become more nuanced in the last couple of years. But Annie's definitely the pickiest of the bunch. But then, well, I mean, I think I'm probably the most, I don't want to say open-minded, but I'm probably the most flexible. I just like good food. Um, I think if you were to break down our different taste palettes, I'd say Annie is kind of the picky one. Ephraim, even though he's never had meat, uh, gravitates towards like meaty, like more traditional meatier flavors and stuff like that. Like he'll smash a Beyond Burger like nobody's business, and loves meaty things like mushrooms, right?
mhm.
My wife probably leans towards more lighter fare, like fresh, light flavors. And I like comfort food, like stews and pastas and that kind of stuff. So we've got a Venn diagram where we all meet up in the middle, but there's a lot of different tastes in our house.
Mm. Do you do any kind of batch cooking for your family, or do you ever do kind of like meals where they just pick the components and kind of put it together themselves?
100%. Like I think the closest thing we do to batch cooking is just making like a double batch of something that we can either freeze for another day or just have for leftovers throughout the week. You know, I don't tend to like cook a huge pot of grains or a huge pot of beans, but that's because I tend to work from home these days, so it's not hard for me to just chuck some grains or some beans in the instant pot that I need for later on the day, and that way they're just fresher and I don't have to worry about things potentially going bad. So that's the closest we get to meal prep. in our house for that. And then what was the second part of the question you asked? It was meal prep.
Oh yeah, do you ever do like, the kind of like, I hear some families just do like, kind of the bowl method or the bar
Oh, yeah,
method
that's
where you,
that's
where
honestly, well, I literally did that last night. And that's something I highly recommend, especially if you're in a family where you're the main cook, and you're the only one eating whole food plant-based. Like the best thing you can do for yourself is to create meals or like bars of meals where you're sharing like 80 to 90% of the ingredients, and then it's just them putting on your protein of choice, right? Sauce of choice and that kind of stuff. So some great examples of that is last night we just did pasta bar, right? So for that, I mean, all of us eat pretty much the same way. The kids are pescatarian. So for that, it was literally I made that in 20 minutes. All I did was I put a pot of water on the stove. I threw some lentils in an instant pot, chopped up some onions and got that going in a saucepan, threw in a jar of oil-free tomato sauce. And once it got going, I threw some sauce in. And then once the pasta came up to boil, I waited until like 2 minutes before the pasta would be done. And then I chopped up a head of broccoli plus the stems, threw it in the pot because that's the best way to cook broccoli is just to like parboil it with the pasta. And then it's all cooked together in the same pot, threw the lentils into the tomato sauce once they were good. And everything was done in like 20-25 minutes. But then what we do is my daughter doesn't like mushrooms, so I cook some mushrooms on the side, right? And my kids still eat, cow cheese, so they are able to put some of that on their bowls if they wanted to. My wife and I use the plant-based cheese that I made. Um, and so that's an example of being able to customize that. But for that example, if you have people that, are still eating animal products, you could have your lentils off to the side, add those, and then your sauce. And if they wanted to do whatever kind of protein they're doing, they could have that on the side and add that at the end. But then the same would apply to like making like tacos, you know, is another great bar dish. But then bowls in general, just a lot of vegetables, raw, cooked, whatever you want to do, some kind of sauce that you can all use, and then pick a cuisine you like, and then research the spices that go with that cuisine. Make a Greek bowl, make a Moroccan bowl. That's the beauty, and we have that in our book. Actually, we've got a chapter that's just dedicated to the flavors and cuisines of the world, and so it's a lot of lists of here's the vegetables and produce from this part of the world and the spices they use. Take this and remix one of your favorite dishes and see what happens. So the book is also trying to encourage people to get in the kitchen and play and maybe fail, but learn something.
do you have mostly entrees in the book? I believe there's over 50 recipes, right?
It's a combination. It's breakfasts, lunches, dinners, and desserts and snacks.
Nice.
Yeah,
Mm,
and lots of sauces, a couple drinks in there. We don't have a salad chapter. I'm one of those guys when I get a cookbook and I see there's a salad chapter, I'm like, I'm never gonna make those. Uh, it's just because salads we just throw together unless it's like a dinner salad. But like a side salad, I just don't know who has time to make a side salad and a main on the same the same time on a weeknight.
That's funny. That's funny. Do you guys all do your own breakfasts at your house?
Yeah, I mean, the kids are teen. My daughter's 13 and my son's 15 now. So they get up and they kind of make their own thing. My daughter goes to my wife's school. She's a teacher. And so she'll often make breakfast for her as well in the morning, or I'll cobble together something. But they're super proficient in the kitchen. Long as they've been able to stand up, they've been cooking with us. So they know their way around the kitchen as well as we do. They're definitely far better cooks than I was at their age. And you'll see what we've designed the book to feel like it's kind of our own personal notebook that we're sharing with you. And so you're going to have photos throughout. There's this great photo of my daughter, like in diapers, standing up at the counter with like a spoon and stirring a bowl, so stuff like that.
I love that she doesn't like mushrooms because I'm one of the few people that are vegan a long time and don't like them either. But interestingly enough, I was recently at the True North Health Center for my annual vacation, and they make them a way that I like them. I don't know what they do to them at the salad bar, but they cook them in some way that like these don't taste too bad.
My daughter is starting to come around. Like she likes the gnocchi mushrooms, and soup. She's okay with that. And if I hide them in something like my shepherd's pie that we make, the recipe is in the book for that as well. That's kind of a mixture of two things she doesn't like. It's got it's a mixture of cauliflower she's okay with, but it's a mixture of cauliflower walnut, which she doesn't like, and mushrooms, which she says she doesn't like. But mixed together with the spices in there, she'll eat it. It's not her favorite meal, but she'll eat it and won't complain. But now she's getting more because she's learned how to read, obviously. So now she looks at the recipes or watches the videos back and realizes I've tricked her into eating some of the things that she says she doesn't like. So she's more savvy, and now she'll sometimes just protest and refuse to eat something out of spite. But she's definitely getting a bit more adventurous. But that's the nature of cooking with kids, you know?
Cooking with kids.
Cooking with kids.
That could be your
That's,
next book.
yeah. Yeah, well, that's something you definitely get to see on the YouTube channel.
So the recipe you're making, I see like a wok in front of you. I'm just curious, do ever you use the Instant Pot for any of your recipes?
Yeah, so this is actually it's just like a deep dish cast iron skillet. But you could make this in a wok if you just need something that's got some volume to the sides of it because it's going to kind of cook down a little bit. This is a meal I think I've actually made this in the Instant Pot too. Just threw everything in and see how it would go, and it worked out pretty good. Yeah, we use the Instant Pot a lot. I've actually literally got it in the background just making rice for this. So that's the other thing too. If you don't have to serve this over rice, you can serve it over any grain you wanted to. And when I was losing weight and I was trying to reduce my carbs, I would sometimes just serve this over top of like a lot of leafy greens. I chop up a bunch of leafy greens and then just pour over top of that and have it like a kind of what I call like a soupy salad.
Soupy salad.
Soupy salad. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
soups make great salad dressings, actually.
Yeah, right? Blend them up. It's amazing. Yeah, that's a good way to use leftover soup when you've just got a little bit left, like not quite enough for a serving, right?
That's perfect.
Hmm.
Perfect. So how many minutes from start to finish would you anticipate this recipe takes if you were going to just do a straight through?
If you're gonna do it straight through, I can make this thing. Well, let's see. Someone time me, but I'm also gonna be talking to all of you. If you've got everything prepped, which isn't that much, you've got to get some frozen peas out of the freezer. But honestly, you can go and grab those while other things are happening. Because with the kind of meal, you got to put your onions in, and then you got to wait for a couple minutes for those to get down. So you could grab those straight out of the freezer. I've got them here, ready to go. And then it's the biggest prep all you've got to do is just cut up an onion, a bell pepper, any color you want. I've got orange here today because that's what I had in my fridge. And grate some garlic. The only thing I haven't done yet is ginger. I want to do like what does my recipe call for? Calls for a tablespoon and a half of ginger root. I often do more just because my wife is a ginger freak. And so I just kind of eyeball it. I don't mind grating ginger and leaving the skin on. It doesn't bother me. I find it all mixes in, you don't really notice it. But for those that don't know, the easiest way to peel ginger is just using the back of a spoon. You must know this trick, AJ.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you know, it's even easier is to buy the little cubes at Trader Joe's, have in the freezer and pop those out.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is just store your ginger in the freezer because it grates even easier. You don't get the stringiness that we're gonna see today because I didn't pull this one out of the freezer. But literally all you gotta do is just pull it along and you'll just cut it off in the shape of the ginger, and so you don't waste any of it. I see people on YouTube like cutting their ginger up, and you're losing, I don't know, at least a third of it by doing that. So I'm just gonna do enough. Again, like I just wanted like a tablespoon and a half, but this is the kind of thing that if you really love ginger, put in more. If you don't like it so much, I mean, you can leave it out, or or use a little bit less. And if you don't have fresh ginger, then just swap this out with like a teaspoon of ginger powder would be fine as well. I always prefer fresh. It's going to give you the most flavor bang for your buck. But, you know, spices are great in a pinch. The same goes as fresh garlic. Like, you know, I think garlic powder and fresh garlic aren't quite the same thing. But if you don't have garlic, or you pull open your garlic bulbs and they're all, you know, squishy and gross, it's better to throw in some garlic powder than to throw in nothing, right?
Yeah. At the pandemic, I first discovered, I mean, it's always been there, but I never bought it until the pandemic when things were getting a little crazy. The garlic in a jar without oil, and sometimes
Oh,
I'll use that.
we used that. We had that. That was like what we used to have. I didn't even know how to mince garlic for the longest time back in my pre cooking properly days. But then once you start cooking with the fresh stuff, you taste the difference, you know?
Absolutely.
It's the same as like whenever I used canned beans versus the beans I cook in my Instant Pot. It's just like, ugh, they're firm in like an off-putting way. I don't know if you find that. Okay, so now everything is really, really, really ready to go. And my pan's good. I'm just gonna throw a couple of drops of water on to make sure it's doing what I like it to do. And I'll try to bring the camera over periodically to show you what I'm doing. The other thing I got ready was my spices. So this is cinnamon, curry powder, turmeric, and chili. What did I say? Curry, chili powder, turmeric, and cinnamon are the spices we're going to use today. So I'm gonna mix those up real quick so they're all pre-blended. That's one thing I recommend doing too, is like whenever you've got a recipe that has a bunch of spices that go on all at once, just take like the extra 30 seconds and just put them all in a bowl off to the side, especially with the curry, because what's going to happen is we're going to throw in the onions, we're going to throw in the pepper and all that kind of stuff, and then we're going to throw in the spices to kind of coat them, right? That's what I love about making curries, is you get flavor in every single bite because you're cooking the spices inside of it, as opposed to throwing in the liquid and then putting in the spices, and then it might not grab onto the vegetables, right? Okay, so this is going well. I'm gonna throw in, I'm just double checking my recipe. Yeah, it's just all we're gonna do is put in, oh, we're gonna put it all in right now. So we're gonna put in the onions are gonna go into the pan. And I'm gonna turn it up a little bit. There's the garlic. The ginger and the garlic are beside each other, and it took me a second. So
You're gonna add them at the same time as the onions.
garlic, onions, and pepper, garlic, onions, pepper are all gonna go in at the same time. And then we're just going to kind of saute those for, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes, just until the onions start to get translucent. And we'll bring you over here. The flavors are good now. Once I throw in those spices, that's when, if the kids are home, they start going, "What's for dinner? What's going on in there?" Or the dog will come over here and be like, "What's up? What's going on in the pot that you're not going to let me have?"
That's funny. You have a jar of something red near your stove top. What am I seeing?
This?
Yeah, what
Is
is
it?
that? What is
Oh, that's one of the MVP ingredients in this. This is mango chutney.
Oh, you can buy it already made. That's cool.
Oh, yeah, yeah. The other thing, I just bought a jar last week because when I was picking this up, but in the grocery store that I go to, they also have a peach chutney, which I've never used. But yeah, I find it's in where is it? It's kind of where you would find like buttered chicken sauce in a grocery store. If you're looking for it. So I mean, I can only imagine if we've got it here in Canada, you've got it in grocery stores there. But it's definitely one of those things you can make your own. This one's good. It's mango, vinegar, salt, spices, ginger, garlic, a little bit of sugar at the end. Sugar's like the last ingredient on here. which for those that don't know, ingredients are listed by weight, right? So if the sugar is at the end, I don't freak out too much. And just looking at the nutritional information, which I don't ever trust that much. It's also hard too because mango is the first ingredient. So some of the sugar you're going to get from the nutritional label is going to include the mango, right? Which, so for those that don't know what a chutney is, it's actually funny. When I was buying this, I couldn't find it right away in the grocery store. And so I was asking one of the people that worked there, and she asked me, she says, "What's that like? I've never had that." She's, "I broke open a jar the other week and whoop, it's got a pungent aroma." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, it's not like a jam. Don't use it like a jam. I mean, maybe you could." Because chutney is, I mean, how would you describe it, AJ? It's
It's a
spicy
condiment,
sweet.
some kind of condiment.
Yeah, it's like spicy sweet, right? It's somewhere in the middle, but for this curry, it kind of brings out the magic of it. Because the other thing that we're going to add to this curry that's not a traditional ingredient, and maybe while we're waiting for this to saute, I'll get that ready, is we're going to add an apple. That's why it's called
Ooh,
apple kissed curry.
nice.
So this is like a golden delicious apple, which is kind of perfect for this. It's a little tart, so it's not overly sweet. That said, I have made this dish with pretty much every apple under the sun. Because sometimes I just want to make it and I can't find these, or I usually don't buy these to eat. I prefer like a Honeycrisp or an Ambrosia, the kind of apples I like. What apples do you like, AJ?
I like something called the envy apple. Do you have that in Canada?
Yep, I've had those before.
That is my favorite.
So I'm going to show you one of my secret weapons in the kitchen. You ever seen one of these things before?
Oh, I love that. I have one of those from Pampered Chef, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. And you can get them online on Amazon, sells them. So this is going to, I'm actually going to peel it too. I don't often peel apples in recipes because I don't mind the peel and I like the little nutrient boost you get from it. But for this, I'm going to take it off because it just makes it a little bit nicer. So this will peel my apple at the same time as slicing it through here. So I'll try to do it in a way where you can see it.
Yeah, that is very sharp, though. Be careful.
It's very sharp. Well, it's okay. I lost the battle with the carrot peeler the other day, and my one finger is just recovering from it. You know what? This apple's getting a little soft, so I got to help it through the guide. Here we go. Oh no!
I do not like when that happens. And that thing, you can also put potatoes on that too.
I've never actually done it, but I always, every time I use it, so I'm guiding it through. I swear this usually doesn't happen like this.
It only happens when somebody's watching. I know.
Yeah, I'm guiding it through because I bought this apple last week, and so it's getting soft. So let's do this. I'm gonna try not to, I should get out my glove. This is what I should have done last week, AJ, when I lost the battle to the carrot peeler.
Oh my God. I caught my thumb off once on a mandolin, and so now I always use a glove when I'm using sharp things.
I did that too. I lost the tip of my thumb to a mandolin. It grew back though. They always
Oh
grow
my,
back.
no, but it hurts so
Yeah, I
much.
didn't. You know what the worst part was when I went to the ER because it couldn't stop. Well, it
Bleeding.
just wouldn't stop bleeding. And the worst part was they didn't warn me at all. They put on this like thing called new skin or whatever it is that they just pour over top that seals it. That stuff, whatever's in that hurts.
Oh,
Okay, so this didn't quite peel the way I wanted it to, so we're just gonna do it the old-fashioned way. Uh, Good enough. Oh, this is gonna be fun to do now. All right, carrot peeler, you and I have not danced since we had our fight last week. I'll keep it low so you don't have to watch a bloodbath. Okay. And again, like I'm not going to be too picky about getting all the peel off because I don't mind it. There's lots of good stuff in those peels. And for this recipe, it doesn't matter all that much. Okay. And what's great about these apple peelers too is that they slice it up nicely. And then all I'm going to do is just like really loosely dice it. just into like bite-sized pieces. You know, just kind of like kind of the same size you'd have probably for your pepper, maybe a little bit bigger, because they're also going to soften up inside the curry. So these ones are going to get really soft, and they're going to add just, I don't know, it's just, this is like a perfect fall meal. And it does, and this is ready to go because it's faster than it's going to be today because we're sitting here chatting and little apple treat. You should always treat yourself to snacking fruits and vegetables while you're cooking. Although, here's what's fun. That slice of apple I just ate, I cut with the same knife that I cut the onion.
What kind of knife are you using? Do you have a preference?
Oh, 1 second. I got a little. So here's a real-time example. So it's starting to stick a little bit. And that's just going to loosen up all of that stuff that was sticking to the pot. Yeah, we don't need oil, right? What is the knife I'm using? Kiln? It's a Canadian brand, I believe. It was actually my wife teaches at a school, and I think someone from that company, she taught the children, and so we got a knife set one year from them, and it's quite nice. But I have a nice Japanese knife over there as well, but it's in desperate need of sharpening. Do you sharpen your own knives, AJ?
Heck no. Oh, not at all.
We learned how to do it during the Ruby course, is one of the things you had to do to pass the course. And so I bought like the thing, the whatever, the granite slate and all this stuff for it, but I don't I don't do it as often as I should. Okay. So now we are going to yeah, we're gonna throw in all our spices. And so I've got the spices pre-mixed like I showed you. We're gonna throw in that ginger, which is, this is way more than a tablespoon and a half.
I thought you already put the ginger in.
No, it was the garlic. I might have said ginger because sometimes I throw in extra words. It was the garlic, the pepper, and the onion.
Okay.
The ginger we're going to throw in now. And we're going to throw in the spices.
Do you have Costco in Canada?
We do.
Is that where you got that bowl? Because I have a bowl just like that.
This one right here?
Yep.
Yep, probably. And so what's really great here is you're going to see is the spices are going to coat everything. And that's what you want for a curry, right? Is you want your vegetables to be spiced. And well, not in this case the fruit, but because that's what's going to just bring flavor to every single bite. So we're just going to do that for, I don't know, like 30 seconds here, just long enough to coat the vegetables. And then what we're going to do quickly is basically throw almost everything else in. I think I throw everything in except for oh yeah, everything's going to go in except for the peas in a second. So first things that are going to go in are, I'm going to throw in my apple because I want to get the spices on that too. And we're going to stir that around. So again, the spices kind of coat that apple. And it's going to get a little mushy in here, and that's totally okay. AJ, I wish we could share smells on YouTube.
I know, and taste. You know what? I also wish that you could buy already oil-free sauteed onions and just have them in your freezer and then pull them out, and then you could save all that time.
Oh, that's true too. Okay, so I'm just going to put a 1/4 cup of this chutney in. You can see it's got some little chunks in there too. It looks like a jelly. I don't know if I've ever actually. It's got a kick on its own.
Oh boy.
I don't think I've ever done that. Do you ever do that? You just like taste the parts?
Yeah, I find when I make things too spicy, I can't fix it very well.
It's tough.
I can't unspice it.
Yeah, it's sweet, I guess, is the trick to that, right? Adding in some sugar or just more of your base. But then that just like messes up the whole everything else. Okay, and then lastly, we're gonna throw in, when do I throw in my zest? Oh, that's gonna go in here too. I haven't done that yet. So
Hey, Jeremy, did you know that California balsamic, my favorite reduced balsamic vinegars, now ships to Canada?
I think last time we chatted, it didn't.
Yeah, I actually, my friend Susanna uh, told me that they do now. It's more expensive than obviously shipping to the US. So she has a US PO box, but I think that's great that they actually ship there now.
Uh, it's good to know.
Good
We
to
love
know.
a balsamic. They're just great foundations for quick sauces, right?
I just love them. And just
I
even a
know.
straight up salad dressing, even.
Oh, and even if you're my daughter, you'll just like pour a little in a bowl and grab a hunk of bread, and that's a nice snack right there. That's sometimes dinner for my daughter if she doesn't like what we made. She'll say, "Do you have any sourdough?" I'll be like, "Yep," and she'll just go and grab a bottle of balsamic vinegar, the way that some people might do after a hard day and a bottle of wine. That's her wine is the vinegar right now.
That's
So
funny.
I'm just zesting a lemon, just using a little zester here. Boop. And we're gonna throw that in too. I haven't done it, but I imagine I'd love to try this with an orange. Would probably be interesting, throwing an orange zest in there. Lime might be too bitter. And then we're just gonna add in our it's a can of low-fat coconut milk.
Oh, wow. That's low fat. That's so thick.
Yeah, well, and when I say it might not be super low fat, I'm trying to remember which one I grabbed because the label got taken off of it. Um, but I've made this with full fat coconut milk. I've made it with low fat coconut milk, and both turn out really, really great. So this is what it looks like as it's all coming together, and we're almost done. What we're going to do now is I'm going to crank this up, and we're going to let this kind of come to a bit of a boil. And then we're going to right before we cover it. Oh, you know what? I just realized I put the apple in too early. The apple was supposed to go in after this step, but that's okay because it's all going to taste good. So
Yep.
I'm going to let this come up. I'm also going to add in my chickpeas right here. And these are chickpeas that I cooked in my Instant Pot. So they're going to be like perfectly, this is what you want. You want a chickpea that mushes in your hand. It's like butter, buttery.
Are
Um,
you going to serve the curry like over a whole grain, perhaps?
Yeah, so I've got some rice already cooking in Instant Pot.
Right.
But this would go well, or you name it, it'll go well over rice. It goes well over couscous, quinoa. Like I said earlier, you could also, if you want to just chop up some kale or some spinach or even just like lettuce, I've done, and you can just pour it over that and turn it into like a stew, and eat it that way. But we tend to eat it over brown rice in our house, so that's already starting to come up. And so what I'm going to do is that's simmering nicely. So I'm going to cover that with my lid, and we're going to let that sit for just like 10 to 15 minutes, is what we're going to do. And then once that is done, and what we're just looking for is all the flavors to just melt. Like everything's pretty much cooked at this point, right? So you don't have to leave it for an incredibly long amount of time. What we just want is the flavors to just deepen, and we want everything that the coconut milk to just envelop it all. And then what we're gonna do just at the end is just throw in some peas. So, and that's why I said, like, if you've just got frozen peas, this is where you can go and grab your peas, right? Start cleaning up all the stuff, all the mess you've made in the kitchen. And then as soon as that 10 minutes is up, we'll say 10 minutes for today. Once that time is up, you just stir these in until these have come up to temperature of the rest of the dish, and then you're done. And what's beautiful is that if you're using frozen peas, this is the trick I like to do, is if you throw in frozen peas, it'll also help to cool down the dish a little bit too, right? That was a trick we used to do with our kids when they were really, really little. We found that my son needed a snack right before bed. So we would make oatmeal and then throw in like a half a cup of frozen fruit. And it was like a little extra fruit for him, but also it cooled down the oatmeal so he could eat it right away.
Clever.
Yeah, that was his like pre-dinner snack every night was oatmeal with a scoop of nut butter and frozen fruit.
It's cool.
It's
What is the
perfect.
most popular recipe you've done so far on your channel?
Ooh, I'd have to look up the actual numbers on it. I think it might be our breakfast cookie, which is in the book.
Yum.
Um, and that's something that I kind of developed when I was starting to go plant-based and I was still really regularly working in the film and television industry. And I'd be on sets a lot where they were always really good and they try to have all the stuff that you'd want, but it's just like there's how it is when you're just in a group full of other people that don't quite eat the way you do. They do their best, but it's not quite the same, you know? So they'll get like cookies that are egg free or this or that, but they'll have butter in them. Or they'll get like two out of three things right and think that that's okay. And you're like, well, no, I need actually because of the way I eat, I need them all to be that way. But I'm so Canadian in that I just don't ever also I'm like, I don't, it's fine. I'll take care of myself. So for me, I'm like, I need a snack on set. Because lunch was always great and they always made sure there was like a plant-based, delicious lunch. But I'm like, and also because I worked as a director, you're on set the whole time. You don't get to walk away. I'm like, I just need something I can throw in my backpack that I can pull out mid-morning or mid-afternoon that's going to keep me going. And so I call it a breakfast cookie, but it's kind of more, it could be used, I say for breakfast, two of them are perfect. And for a snack, one of them's perfect because they're pretty big and substantial. But what's great about those, and it's kind of the reoccurring theme you'll see in the book, at the bottom of every page, there's like a little post-it note graphic that has our tips, which is a lot of times swaps. So that's a cookie where you kind of mix in grated zucchini, but I also say if you don't have zucchini or you don't like zucchini, grate up some carrot, would work just as well. And for the mix-ins for that, like my perfect version of that would be softened goji berries and pistachios. But if you don't have or like either of those things, any dried fruit and nut will be fine in that too, And it's also fun, and you can change up the spices as well. If you want to make one that's more like want to put cocoa in there, put cocoa in there and some dried cherries or dried, then you've got like a chocolate cherry kind of version of it.
Yum. Hey, Vi is asking if you could talk about your Mighty Networks community membership.
Oh, good job, Vi. Vi is one of the heroes of that group. So that's something we start. You know what? I found there's a little bit extra zest in here, so that's going to go in the pot because it wants to join the rest of it. So our that's Mighty Network is the like kind of the name of the site. And it's an online community. So it's like a membership community that we have that we call is like a PB with J 2.0. Because what we were finding about a year ago was that uh, it was getting kind of hard to keep up with all the comments on the videos and, when people were responding to the comment you left and whatnot. And so what I wanted to do for the people that were really, really engaged was to create a space where they could have just more access to us. And we could have like longer, more in-depth conversations. And so, but we also wanted to we don't want to like charge a penalty for people that wanted or needed that. So we wanted to keep the price point as low as possible. So as we say on the channel, it's the price of a crappy cup of coffee a month, which is like, I think it's like $3.
Wow.
Um, and so for that, you get access to our community boards, which are really, really great. Like people are in there throughout the day, every day, posting stuff, answering questions. It's a community that's really growing together and learning off of each other. They're sharing their recipes. I'm sharing my recipes. You get a preview of all of our videos. Our videos come up Wednesdays and Saturdays. So if you're on the Mighty Network, you get those 2 days early. And we do a monthly live stream for the members only of that community. Where on Sunday we did one where I cooked the fig, our version of like a fig Newton
Ooh, that
for that,
sounds great.
and that's in the book too. And my daughter randomly joined in on that. So that's the other thing you get to with our lives. Like sometimes another member of the family will join in unexpectedly. But what was cool about that was like that's a cookie that requires a little bit of precision because you've got to shape it in a certain way. and I quieted my nerves and let her do that part of one of them. Also to kind of demonstrate to the community is like, look, she's 13, she's never made this cookie before. If she can do it, anyone can do it.
That's very cool to see young people in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And somebody's asking about the cast iron skillet, about if it's, is it kind of, what was the question? Is it hard to use? Is it a hassle using a big skillet like that?
I guess I'm curious. It's like follow up. What a hassle in what way? Like it's too heavy?
Yeah,
It would
well,
cost.
it's a big thing. Yeah, maybe that's
Yeah.
what.
I mean, one thing you can get, we have one of these things. Because the cast iron, it's one full piece. So you can get things like these that you can slip over the end of it, so it's easier to hold. If you don't want, otherwise you could use an oven mitt or a towel. So that stuff like that. Duncan's kitchen grips. I don't. We've had this for forever. I don't even know where we got it from. I'm sure they sell these online. So something like that, which I probably should have put on earlier. They are heavy, So for me, it's not so bad, but it's like to lift it up, it's probably a two-hand operation, you know. Um, but I just like cast iron a lot. You do have to, when you're seasoning it, you do have to use some oil to get it started, but I don't put oil on it every single time. I rarely put oil on it. The only time I'll sometimes just add the smallest amount of oil to the pan for is like pancakes. Because I find they'll usually free up and they're okay, but every now and then. But it's the smallest amount. It's like maybe a teaspoon is the most I'll just like put on as it's heating up. But other than that, like you saw today, like I'm cooking onions in there. Like for cooking, I never ever use oil. If I'm doing baking, sometimes I'll just put the smallest amount of layer on that is not meant to be part of the dish. It's more just meant to keep from sticking. But whenever I can avoid that, I do.
Somebody's asking if you moved, if the kitchen looks different.
We have, yeah, we get this question a lot. We have two kitchens because we often shoot videos at our place in the country. My wife, Wooly, has an old farmhouse that's part of her family that is kind of our version of a weekend home getaway, which is where at some point when the kids are moved out of the house, we'll probably end up relocating there full time. It's a beautiful, beautiful old farmhouse that's just in Kitchener, which is another area in Ontario where we live. So yeah, so we bounce back and forth between that place and here. So sometimes you'll see me in a different kind of kitchen.
Cool. All right. Here's a question from Barbara. What was your favorite recipe review that you've done?
Oh, what's the favorite? Oh, well, Sweet Indulgence clearly was my favorite
Well, it has
cookbook.
nothing to do with the fact that you're on. I'm just kidding, but thank you. That was an extraordinary series. Thank you.
Well, bless you for being like open. I know the one thing whenever someone reaches out and offers to send us their book, I always say, and I told this to you, I'm like, that's fine, but you have to understand my kids are going to say what they're going to say. And I can't predict it. You'll see on the channel when we're doing, I'm like, I think my kids are going to like this, or I think they won't. And I get the opposite reaction because they just react how they're going to react, whether I like it or not. And, we don't let them be rude, or at least we try not to. Um, because I try to approach the review, at least the way I do the reviews, kind of the way Roger Ebert used to review movies. Like what I liked about his style was that he always wanted to like the thing he was watching. And if he didn't, he tried to figure out who would like it, because, oh, that's telling me to put the peas in.
The peas in. Yeah.
Season. So I try to, that's at least my perspective of going, well, what was the intention behind this dish or just this book in general? And then we go from there. So I think you know, I say it, obviously because you're here and I adore you, but Sweet Indulgence is really a masterwork of a dessert book. It's like it's one of those books when you get it, you're like, I don't need another dessert book because it's going to take me, first of all, it's going to take me a long time to get through this. But it's also just I don't have to convert anything,
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
which
Yeah.
is so great. And there's also so many great little takeaways in that book, like that making date paste. Oh my goodness. It's the easiest thing in the world. Like you used the recipe AJ has in the book has you using the Instant Pot.
Yeah, that is that I wish I could say I invented that was from my friend Jenny, but it is so easy, especially when you don't have any on hand. I mean, we're talking like a minute.
So quick, yeah. It's like a minute in there, and then you put it in the food processor.
Yeah, it's
We're
so,
just gonna go to
oh, you know
here.
what I do, Jeremy? I don't even put it in the food processor. I use the stick blender.
Oh, that's what you. Oh, right, and right in the pot.
Yeah, because I don't want to well, it depends because like let's say if I'm making something like a crust and I need the food processor dry, I don't want to have to make date paste in the food processor, so I just take the stick blender right in the Instant Pot.
Well, and also not like it's hard to do, but who wants to clean the food processor when you don't have to?
Right. Exactly. It's so much easier to just put the stick blender in the top of the dishwasher.
So this is the rice I cooked, and literally all I did to make this rice was I put in a cup and a half of brown rice, and a little over 2 cups of water, and I put it on just the rice preset on the Instant Pot. And I find the key to perfect rice is letting it naturally release, because it just lets some extra floofiness go in there. So I always put the rice on really early. If I'm including rice in a dish, that's the first thing, and you can see it doesn't stick at all,
Oh, that's
right?
beautiful.
So, and if you wanted to, you could. I just did water here, but if you want to add a little extra flavor, you could cook it with broth, um, or you could add your own spices to it. You could add a bay leaf. Really, you want to think about what's going to complement the dish you're making. So for this, like I know it's going in a curry, so it's that rice is going to soak up all the juices of the curry. So I don't need to really add anything to it. But for if I was making, like, for example, if I'm gonna make like Mexican rice bowls, I'll sometimes throw in a couple tablespoons of tomato paste with the water and mix it up, and then cook the rice in that. And then the rice just is like a tomato rice. It's really, really simple and nice. And you can throw in some like taco spice or oregano or other things in there really quickly, just to spice up your dish. All
That
right, this is
looks
ready to go. This is
that
done.
looks beautiful. Are you going to garnish it with like a few, I don't know, what do they usually put on Indian food? A few scallions, perhaps?
Yeah, you could throw some scallions in there. You could, because it's a bit sweeter. I mean, you could throw cilantro in. Yeah, this is like we're big on doing that. I don't necessarily have any fresh herbs on there right now, but
Yeah,
that's the kind of
cilantro. I
thing.
think cilantro would be great.
Cilantro would be good. But it's just, and this is my test, right? Is always like I just get just the broth, just to know if you want to season anymore, right?
Well, that's the best part, just even that over rice.
It's so good. I'm not. It's like I know I'm like trying to hawk our book and whatnot, but this is actually just straight up
Oh,
delicious.
it
It's
looks
so.
amazing. And guys, get the book, support Jeremy. I've been putting the link in the chat. It's also in the show notes. Get a 20% off discount. When will the book be released?
Yeah, so it is going to be out on November 27th, and we are on. I know I posted a video yesterday. We posted, if you want to see it on our channel, PB with Jay. We did a deep dive behind the scenes of the book. So showing you, telling you, kind of explaining how the book works, why we made it. And then in the back half of the video, because one of the things that was really important to me with this book was to make sure that the recipes worked for other people. And so we actually had a lot of volunteers from our YouTube audience. We had over 60 people volunteer to be recipe testers for the cookbook. And so every recipe is tested by at least half a dozen or more people. And so we took a lot of their suggestions to help, just rewrite the directions if they weren't clear. A lot of them, made flavor suggestions that we tested out and took some of those. And what's really cool too, that I'm really proud of in the book, is that we have our photos of the recipes, and they're all the photos in the book are the dishes right before we ate them. So they're not like in a big photo studio with a food designer. It's all stuff I took a picture of either in my kitchen or my living room with, like, a nice little light. So, the photos look nice that way. But what we also did whenever possible was we included photos of the recipes that were made by our recipe testers, to show you what it looks like that when someone else made it. Because I don't know if you've had that experience, AJ, where like you cook a recipe from a cookbook and then you look at your final version and you look at the one in the book and it's like, oh, these don't match.
Oh my God, that happened to me with fabulously talented chef from Millennium Restaurant, Eric Tucker. I mean, I could not get it to look or taste anything like his beautiful dish that he serves at the restaurant.
Yeah, so we wanted to make it so you that's like here's what ours looks like, but here's what it looks like from someone who just followed the recipe from the first time. And also we included, sometimes they would send us like notes, like additional notes, and sometimes so those are in some of the pages as well. Has some of our recipe testers notes or suggestions or ideas are in the book as well.
That sounds great. Well, I can't wait to grab my copy. I wish you every success with it.
Thanks, AJ.
Yeah, are you going to plate it and show us, or maybe even take a bite?
Sure. Let me get some rice. Let me get a little bowl. Let me get a pretty bowl.
I love rice. I like to cook my rice in my rice cooker, though. I've never been great at cooking it at the Instant Pot.
Well, we never got a rice cooker, so the Instant Pot is like our version of that. So I'm just gonna take a dollop of brown rice.
White rice is my guilty pleasure.
I know that's my daughter. Every time she's like, "Can we have white rice on it? Can we white rice?" And usually I try to negotiate something with her. She's got to do something for me to get white rice, which it's probably not a healthy thing, but anyway. So I always like to get like the hefty, like the bulk of the like solid ingredients, and then I like to follow it up with the juice or the broth, I guess is the better term, and just.
That looks delicious. The sauce looks so thick.
Yeah, and what's really nice is that if I had a red pepper, I'd probably go with a red pepper in here just so that like the colors pop even more. Like the orange blends in a bit with the other colors, but you could I haven't used a green pepper in here, I don't think, but a green pepper would give it a different vibe for sure. It's be a bit more pungent. So I would err on the side of like a yellow, a red, or an orange.
Well, it looks fabulous.
And what's great about this is I'm making this now. It's like 3 o'clock here in Canada.
Well, it's going to be even better as the flavors just meld.
So we'll eat this in a couple hours. I'm gonna make. We're working on the next video we're working on right now that I'm shooting that won't be up for a couple weeks. Is I just picked up Pamela Anderson's vegan cookbook. It's called I Love You. It's a cool book. It's like she was writing. She's vegan, and she was writing all of her recipes out for her kids as they were leaving home, and she wanted to share her recipes with them. And then it turned into eventually. I don't know how it was. I'm sure she told someone about it, and they're like, "You should publish this." So that's what it is. And so I'm making a focaccia from it that I don't know if it's going to work because hers uses like variety of flours, mostly white, and a lot of oil, and I'm going to try to use aquafaba and only whole wheat. And it's going to be one of those kitchen experiments that might fail.
Well, I can't wait to watch it. Your channel's so fun. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for helping us talk about the book.
Absolutely. It'd be my pleasure. I sent you my official endorsement yesterday.
I know we're gonna be putting it into the book somewhere. So thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you. Guys, get the book. Support a fellow plant-based eater who has amazing recipes. You'll get it the day before Thanksgiving. There's still time to cook from it.
Mm-hmm.
All
That's
right.
true.
Take care, Jeremy. Thanks so much.
Thanks, AJ.
And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ and Friends. Please come back next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time for Dr. Alan Goldhammer, who will show you how to